Okay, we seem to have some technical issues there, but we are, of course, talking about West Asia's defining crisis, what's going on the Gaza Strip right now, as we hear once again further attacks by Israel on Gaza.
نايمين فمن الله وفي شيء ما لقينا الا غضب علينا ولحقوا علينا وعلى الاطفال. هذه طفله طلعتها من تحت البطون. هذه والله بنت اللي استشهدت هذه والله طول الليل وهي ماسكه في ايدي زي جنبي. اطفال زي هذه ايش ذنبهم؟ ايش ذنبهم تنزل عليهم سقوف بطون؟ ايش ذنبهم الاطفال اللي زي والله طلعتها تحت غضب. والله تحت البطون طلعته وبتسيخ البنت.
يعني صاروخين اخترقوا الطابق الثاني، نزلوا على الطابق الارضي، فرغ الطابق الارضي كله بما فيه بالنازحين.
نايمين عادي، ما لقيت الا شيء بهود علينا الساعه 2، شيء بنك وشي حجار وشي غضب وشي كذا وشي كذا. انا طلعت ولاد من تحت الغضب، يعني هاي الطفله هذه تعملت تطلعها، الاطفال كلها هيك. انت شايف هي كلها.
ايش هدفهم بيستهدفوا الاطفال؟ يعني ليش بيستهدفوا الاطفال؟ يعني انا كمان اولادي 4 كانوا راحوا في لحظه وانا كان رحت معاهم. يعني احنا ضربنا على اليهود، احنا شو ذنبنا اصلا؟ ايش الذنب اللي عملناه احنا؟ احنا بننزح من مكان لمكان، غرب غزه امن، وين الامن؟ احنا بننجى صراحه باعجوبه.
The Israeli military has warned Palestinians in Gaza City to move south as it bombed a high-rise tower and pushed deeper into the enclave's largest urban centre. Israeli forces have been advancing on the northern suburbs for weeks under orders from Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to capture the city. We are now joined by our guest Mati Zaweg, who is a geopolitical expert, and he joins us live from Israel to discuss this further. Mati, always a pleasure to talk to you here on the programme.
A pleasure.
Thank you for taking the time. Of course, we're hearing more news from this ongoing offensive inside Gaza City, a highly controversial offensive, high population density, where civilian casualties here are almost certain. We are now getting reports from the enclave that a school has been hit, the Al-Farabi school, which was sheltering families, displaced families. 2 children were reportedly killed in a strike on a tent. Of course, this operation is already extremely controversial. What's your immediate reaction to when you hear news like this? And what is the viewpoint of Israel when, of course, they hear the news of children constantly being caught here and being killed in Israeli action in the Gaza Strip?
Well, thank you for having me. You said yourself, this is an ongoing offensive. And this is an ongoing offensive because there is no ceasefire and because there is no agreement. This is a terrible war for both sides. You are talking only about the Gazan side, and it's terrible when the life of a child is lost. But this is a part of the behavior of the Hamas having civilians as human shields. This is not a casualty that a coincidence that you are talking about a school or are talking about a mosque or even sometimes about any ambulance, because they are hiding themselves between all these places. When you say a school, it's not a school. It's a place that used to be a school.
Yes,
and now
of course.
It's full of terrorists.
Of course. I did state it there.
And it's terrible, but the core question here is not in a fire, and we are not in a ceasefire. Hamas is not ready to free the hostages. It's not ready to dismantle themselves, as even the moderate Arab countries are asking for.
Hamas said it would free the hostages, Mati, under a new deal, which included a 60-day pause in the fighting. Israel denied that deal that they previously accepted and pressed on with this offensive, which is widely unpopular across the world and also within Israel, of course, as well.
We are talking about 2 extremist sides. One side that they say they're going to free the hostages for months and months again and again in Doha, in Qatar, in Egypt, in every place, but they are not doing this. They are also not dismantled themselves. They are just talking to gain some more time because they are thinking that the world is so desperate to finish this that they are going to pressure Israel to stop everything without receiving what they want. And not only Israel, also Europe, also the US, also the moderate Arab countries, which is to free the hostages and dismantle Hamas. Until they are not going to accept this war is going to continue and to play in the hands of a little part of the Israeli government that is very extremist and say, you look, we don't have no one to talk, so let's push, let's press, let's attack again and again. So the world must do pressure not only on Israel, also to Hamas. I say this every day. I will continue to say this because also the society in Israel inside is really suffering from this war. You don't see this because you don't see 20 or 30 people dying today or yesterday.
Okay.
But nobody is talking already that in some very little time we're going to say 2 years of the 7th of October of 2023, which was the biggest pogrom in the history of the modern history of Israel.
Okay, Matty, do stay with us. We have further updates for our viewers. The Israeli Foreign Minister Gideon Saar has warned today that a unilateral recognition of a Palestinian state would push Israel to take its own unilateral decisions, signalling potential shifts in Israeli policy. Let's listen in to what he had to say.
It will not bring us closer to peace or security. It will destabilize the region. It will push Israel also to have unilateral decisions, and that will be a grave mistake.
Meanwhile, Danish Foreign Minister Lars Løkke Rasmussen has made it clear that Denmark currently has no plans to recognise a Palestinian state at the upcoming UN General Assembly. But he did emphasise that Israel does not hold a veto over Denmark's future decisions. He stressed Denmark's support for a Palestinian state comes with strict conditions, including disarmament and democratic governance. We are once again joined by Matty Zaweg to discuss this further. Matty, of course, Benjamin Netanyahu has said that neither the PLO or Hamas cannot be put in charge of Gaza once the Gaza war is over, and says it needs to be a different body in charge of the enclave. However, when it comes to the West Bank, Israel, of course, has announced these E1 settlements, which Bezalel Smotrich stood in front of a board and gladly said there'll be nothing left of a Palestinian state to recognise if these settlements are built. What are your thoughts on Israel's response to this? And of course, of Benjamin Netanyahu's affiliation with his greater Israel vision, which he said he has a deep connection to, which of course also contains Palestinian land as well. Maddie, what are your thoughts on that?
Let's divide the question at least in two, if not in three, because this theme has been controversial inside the Israeli society since 1967. Every time there were attempts of doing a peace accord and they partially succeed, and then they came again, the terrorism from different factions from the Palestinian side. And then every time it was like fueling the biggest fears and the biggest extremist sentiments of not doing any kind of concessions to the Palestinian side every time that we are talking about peace. And buses and markets are people blowing away with bombs and with suicidal terrorists. People forget about this, but the people inside Israel don't forget about this. And this is became more and more hard every time. And now we get to this moment. And in this moment, we have a government in Israel that is highly controversial also inside Israel. All the surveys say that there were elections today, they are going to lose by a minimum of 65 to 35. But anyway, we are a democracy and we don't have elections until 2026. What is happening now is, like I said in other themes, that Hamas is playing to the extreme. They are playing to feed the extremists in Israel too, because it's good for their narrative. Their narrative that there is nothing to talk about peace with Israel. We always have to plan how to destroy Israel. And this is playing 100% with the extremists in Israel, that they are not going to talk about not annexing or not pushing for more war or not taking again the control of Gaza. So we are going back to the same point. If Israel and the world are going to dismantle Hamas, everything will be different, because also even the government in Israel, they cannot continue talking that they will have no partners. And about the AP, they have changed the way of behaving every years. They were always, despite all the problems, continued their cooperation with Israel under the Oslo Accords. And today they can be a part of a wider coalition of people, of countries that they will take care of Gaza in the future.
Yes, Matti Zaweg, thank you very much for joining us. Pleasure having you on the programme. We now move over to Europe for our next story, where Russia has said that it targeted only military sites and related infrastructure in a massive overnight strike that also hit a government building in central Kyiv. The Russian army says its forces struck Ukraine's military-industrial complex and transport infrastructure, including weapon and equipment warehouses, military airfields and site for launching long-range drones. The Russian Defense Ministry also said its forces have taken control of the Khor Oshi in Ukraine's Dnipropetrovsk region. We have further global reactions of Russia's huge overnight barrage. European leaders have expressed strong support for Ukraine following Russia's strike on Kyiv's main government building. French President Emmanuel Macron condemned the drone and missile attacks, saying Russia is locking itself ever deeper into the logic of war and terror. Latvia's president accused Moscow of escalating the conflict by targeting civilian infrastructure, calling for more weapons to Ukraine and greater pressure on Russia. EU Commission Chief Ursula von der Leyen also said that the Kremlin is mocking diplomacy, reiterating Europe's full support for Ukraine. Now we have further updates from the Russia-Ukraine conflict, where Moscow's largest overnight air attack of the war has left 3 people dead, including an infant in Kyiv, whose body was pulled from the rubble. Ukrainian officials have stated this today. Reactions have come in from residents in Kyiv following the attack. Let's listen in to what some of them had to say.
Годині почули оці підриви.
Оля, скажи, що людей було мало.
Людей спочатку було мало, а знаємо, як це буває, що вони кацапи спочатку запускають шахеди, потім йдуть ракети, коротше, рутина вже, на жаль. Теж, сиділи, я навіть спала, а о 3-й годині почули оці підриви.
Оля, скажи, що людей було мало.
Людей спочатку було.
Joined by Major General Gigi Davidi. He's a global strategic defense expert and he joins us live from New Delhi. Major General Davidi, thank you very much for joining us here on the program. Pleasure. Russia has said that it only targeted military sites and related infrastructure in these huge overnight strikes. However, Ukrainian authorities have confirmed that civilians have been killed in these strikes on the Ukrainian capital and elsewhere in Ukraine, by the way. Do you think that Putin's and Russia's words here are correct, given the fact that it does conduct these huge aerial barrages when it says it wants peace?
Well, Thomas, first and foremost, we need to understand that President Putin is not serious. to end the war anytime soon. And his current strategy to fight the war is two-pronged. One is the aerial warfare. Through the aerial warfare, drone strike, air strikes, Russian forces are targeting Ukrainian military infrastructure, energy, and also logistics. Primary aim is that to degrade Ukrainian fighting potential. And in that, definitely there would be casualties to the civilians because there's always collateral damage. And while Russian may claim that they have only targeted the military installations or related infrastructure, but you cannot just have very pinpointed strikes, so collateral damage does take place and would have taken place. On the ground, the Russian forces are making tactical gains, small gains, which will give them better bargaining position when and at what time there is either ceasefire or there is a cessation of hostilities. So therefore, they are moving on two prongs. One is the aerial warfare, one is the ground warfare. But we need to understand few things which are playing at the mind of President Putin. Today, President Putin is no more isolated. He is very much on the global scene. You saw that in SEO, and also he attended the 80th Victory Parade in Beijing. So he is not isolated. He is in fact very much on the global scene. And secondly, he has put certain conditions on Ukraine that he wants at least complete Donbass, that is about 30% of the territory. On the other side, European nations are rallying together. They are preparing for some kind of post-secession security guarantees. But I feel that currently, I don't think President Putin is in mood to end the war. He'll continue his current pattern, aerial strikes to degrade Ukrainian fighting potential and morale of the nation, and on the ground make tactical gains so that he has a good bargaining position whenever negotiation starts. Thomas.
Yes, and Major General, of course, we've seen a wide plethora of European leaders speak out about these strikes on the Ukrainian capital and other parts of the country. Do you think that Europe, given its geographical importance in this war and the countries surrounding Ukraine, do you think they have been doing enough in supporting Kiev in this battle?
Well, that's a big question mark. Well, I can say that they have been doing, but I don't think they have been doing enough, because had they done enough, then at least Ukraine would have got better results in the war that is going on. In fact, only I think recently they had a European Union nations meeting. I think 26 odd nations did take part, and they were trying to figure out as to how to support Ukraine, and also when the hostilities cease, how to provide guarantee. But Thomas, the reality is that they have only gone like half a step up, but the Ukraine hasn't got the kind of support that is needed to fight out Russia, especially if you talk about Air Force, you talk about the air defense missile system, and even on the ground equipment. I think they are barely on the margin. And I was reading yesterday President Zelensky saying that they are almost fighting with 60% of the indigenous equipment, but I think the European aid is coming in only half-hearted manner. They haven't got what they should have given to Ukraine to fight it out, and therefore Ukraine is just able to manage to fight another day, but they just don't have resources to go in for major victory that like they went in Kosovo. So I think if this kind of thing continues, I feel that this type of low-level war will continue. I don't see this ending anytime soon. Thomas.
Well, yes, of course. Well, Major General, that leads me on to my next question. EU Commission Chief Ursula von der Leyen has said that the Kremlin is mocking diplomacy. Since Donald Trump has become president, peace talks have been at the center of this conflict. Diplomacy has been promising. However, Vladimir Putin's actions speak different volumes. Given the state that this war is in, do you see this ending anytime soon?
Well, it is now, the war is in the like a meat grinding war. It is almost in status stalemate. But President Putin is convinced that he is winning, while I don't think he is winning. And if at all he is making small gains, that is coming at a huge cost in terms of casualties and I think loss of their equipment, because they are taking very heavy casualties. But as it stands now, the peace initiatives like the one at Alaska between President Trump and President Putin, they hasn't made any headway, because simply President Putin is not prepared to end the war anytime soon, because he feels that he is winning and he can make further gains. That is one fallacy and delusion. And secondly, as I brought out, that European nations or America are not doing enough to help out Ukraine or to arm Ukraine so that they can put up a better resistance. So I think in this case, President Putin is going to buy time, and now soon the winters will come. In the winters, of course, the pace of operation slow down further. So I think in next 2 to 3 months, until there is something dramatic that happens, or President Putin is convinced that he has been able to gain the upper hand and he goes over the negotiation table, I think we'll see this meat grinding type of war continue for a few months to come, at least. Thomas.
Major General Dwivedi, pleasure to have you here on the programme, and thank you for taking the time and joining us.
Thank you, Thomas.
Thank you. We now move on and over to North America, where South Korea has wrapped up talks with the United States over the release of detained Korean workers in Georgia. Presidential Chief of Staff Kang Hun-sik has announced. This comes after US federal agents raided a Hyundai motor manufacturing facility in Georgia this week. Hundreds were detained in the raid, with the majority reportedly being Korean nationals. Let's take a listen in to what the South Korean Presidential Chief of Staff had said.
정부 부처와 경제단체, 기업이 한마음으로 신속하게 대응한 결과 구금되어 있는 근로자들의 석방교섭이 마무리되었습니다. 다만 행정 절차만 남아있고, 이 행정 절차가 마무리되는 대로 전세기가 우리 국민 여러분을 모시러 출발합니다. 향후 유사 사례 재발 방지를 위해 우리 산업부 및 관련 기업 등과 공조하에 대미 프로젝트 관련 출장자의 체류 지휘와 비자 체계를 점검, 개선하는 방안을 추진할 것입니다.
Now we move on once again, where a teenager who died due to leukemia in 2006 has become the first Catholic saint of the millennial generation in a Vatican ceremony led by the Pope Leo and attended by an estimated 770,000 young worshippers from dozens of countries. Carlo Acutis, a British-born Italian boy who died at age 15, learned computer code to build websites to spread his faith. Leo, the first US pontiff, canonized Acutis today. Let's take a listen in to what Pope Leo had to say.
Ad honorem sanctet individue Trinitatis, ad exaltationem fidei catholicae, et vitae Christianae incrementum, auctoritate Domini nostri Iesu Christi, beatorum apostolorum Petri et Pauli ac nostra, matura deliberatione prehabita, et divina ope sepius implorata, ac de plurimorum fratrum nostrorum consilio, Beatus Petrum Georgium Frassati et Carolum Acutis, sanctus esse discernimus et definimus, ac sanctorum cathologo ascribimus. Statuentes eius in universa ecclesia, inter sanctus pia devotione reculit debere, in nomine Patris et Filii et Spiritus Sancti.
Thousands of people queued up to enter the St. Peter's Square to witness the canonization of the Italian teenager. Let's listen in to some reactions.
A moment to have such a great array of people getting canonized today, St. Carlos and St. Pier Giorgio. For me, St. Carlo Acutis is very important, very special, because he gives me the hope that I can become a saint and that I can raise saints. We want to be parents, and we want a child like Carlo, or we want to become like Carlo. So that's very important for us.
Sì, ma la Chiesa è stata sempre aperta ai giovani e questo però è sicuramente un segno importante. Dobbiamo anche capire che leggere tra le righe quello che Dio vuole dirci, cioè che un po' la santità passa attraverso la ferialità, la quotidianità e quindi possiamo diventare santi tutti. Tutti siamo in questo cammino, tutti con le nostre fragilità, ma siamo tutti immensamente amati.
Porque es sencillo, es humilde, entiende que amar a Dios está en la sencillez de las cosas. Una anécdota muy especial es que él dejaba sus zapatos y se los entregaba a las personas de la calle, llegaba sin zapatos a la casa y yo creo que eso es algo que todos tenemos que aprender, que es entregarlo todo por amor, hasta los zapatos.
Well, that is all that we have time for, but we will continue to bring you more news updates from around the world.